Hi, this is Joanna from Custom Quilts, and today I'm going to show you how to quilt a really cool grid into a smaller shape, a shape that isn't a square. And so I've got this panel that has clamshells printed on it, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw in my grid, and I'm using a 2-inch grid, and I'm going to use a water erasing pen so that it stays on and doesn't erase. Usually I'll use an air erasing, because it'll go away and I won't have to put water on it or anything like that. So I'm going to do my 2-inch grid at a 45-degree angle from the vertical of this clamshell. So I'm drawing my reference line, and then I'm going to mark a 2-inch grid using that as my reference. So I'm going to start here. And then I'm going to come over here and mark that line. And then right about there looks good. Come over here and finish marking this side. And I'll probably have to mark just one more little line on this corner to keep everything even Stevens. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is I like to, whenever I'm quilting in this grid, I like to fill this in with alternating lines because it gives it some really cool texture. And so I like to kind of mark some reference lines so I know which way I need to quilt my lines. So I'm gonna do some little arrows. And even when I mark these, sometimes I get confused. So this part's really important if you are easily confused to mark your grid. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring my bobbin thread up to the top. And I'm gonna stitch in place a few stitches to secure my threads. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna outline my clamshell. And then I'll go in and quilt the grid. So I've got a nice curved ruler. Doesn't match the curve exactly, but I can move it so that it fits perfectly. Just like that. Come over here. Okay. Readjust my ruler a little bit. Perfect. All right, so I'm back where I started. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to start quilting in my grid lines. So I'm going to use my ruler as a guide, and I'm gonna quilt lines every 1/4 of an inch. So I'm doing the lines in alternating directions. And so while this is kind of a time-consuming fill, I really like the texture that it gives at the end. And I feel like it's really worth the time. Okay. Come over here, and now I'm going to fill in this box. Okay, and so one thing that I didn't talk you through is the distance from my needle to the outside of my foot is 1/4 inch. So I know that whenever this foot is touching the stitch line, the next line is going to be 1/4 of an inch away. And so I can kind of eyeball whenever I'm moving my foot how far away I need to be from this line before I start sewing again, and then I just use my ruler as a guide to kind of double check. And another thing that is good to mention is it's always easier to quilt with the ruler either on the left side of the needle or I guess the front side of it. Anytime you have to put the ruler back here behind it or back here, it's a little more difficult because you have less control and you can't really see what you're doing. So I always like to have my ruler to the front, here or here. And I do have a ruler base on my long arm right now. It's really important that you have a ruler base if you're doing ruler work, because otherwise, unless you have like a really broad machine that's wide enough for you to position your ruler against, you'll get like a wobbly action. And if the end of the ruler tips up, it could hit the needle and break the needle and throw your timing off and do some really not good things. So it's important to have a ruler base. All right, and that's it. We've done one whole clamshell, and you'll just continue doing this until you fill whatever motif you want to fill. It doesn't matter what shape it is. It can be a clamshell, it can be a circle, it can be a half square triangle. This multi-directional grid will really go well in anything, and you can even change the spacing of the lines to make it either less dense or more dense. It's all just personal preference. So I hope you'll give this a shot. This is a really cool motif that I enjoy quilting, especially on this panel, because I don't have to worry about, tedious piecing before I get to quilt something cool. So yeah, I hope you'll give this a shot, and thanks so much for watching.